Have you ever wondered why America couldn't prevent the Soviet Union from constructing the Berlin Wall? The Berlin Wall, a formidable concrete barrier, stood as a stark division between East and West Berlin from 1961 to 1989. This seemingly impenetrable structure was erected by the Communist East German government, a satellite state of the Soviet Union, with the aim of halting the escape of its citizens to the democratic West. But what kept the United States, a global superpower and the leader of the free world, from intervening and putting an end to this division? Let's delve into the complex history of this period to find out. First and foremost, it's essential to understand that Berlin occupied a unique position in the context of the Cold War. The city served as the capital of Germany, which had been divided into 4 occupation zones after World War II, with the Americans, British, French, and Soviets each overseeing one zone. Berlin itself was also divided into 4 sectors, all entirely encompassed within the Soviet-occupied zone. This geographical reality meant that the Western Allies had to traverse Soviet territory to access their sectors in Berlin, rendering it an isolated bastion of democracy and capitalism amidst a sea of communism and autocracy. Berlin became a powder keg of the Cold War, bearing witness to several crises and confrontations between the East and the West, such as the Berlin Blockade, the Berlin Airlift, and the Berlin Crisis of 1961. Secondly, the United States found itself constrained in terms of options and incentives to prevent the Soviet Union from erecting the Berlin Wall. The primary reason behind the Soviet decision to build the wall was to staunch the massive flow of East Germans to the West via Berlin. Between 1949 and 1961, approximately 2.7 million East Germans, constituting 15% of the population, fled to the West, with Berlin as the primary route. This massive emigration posed a grave challenge to the East German regime's legitimacy and the stability of the entire Soviet bloc. Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev had demanded that the Western Allies withdraw from Berlin and recognize East Germany as a sovereign state, threatening to sign a separate peace treaty with East Germany, thereby cutting off their access to Berlin. The Western Allies, however, refused to acquiesce, and Khrushchev authorized the construction of the Berlin Wall as a last-ditch effort to seal the border. In the face of this situation, the United States confronted a dilemma. Should they risk a full-blown war with the Soviet Union over Berlin, or should they begrudgingly accept the reality of the Berlin Wall? Several factors guided their choice. Firstly, the United States was keen to avert the possibility of a nuclear war, which could have catastrophic global consequences. Both superpowers had stockpiled thousands of nuclear weapons, and any direct military engagement could spell mutual annihilation. Furthermore, the United States was already embroiled in other conflicts, like the Korean War and the Vietnam War, and was disinclined to open another front in Europe. Secondly, the United States did not perceive the Berlin Wall as an existential threat to its national security or interests. The wall did not alter the status quo in Berlin, as the Western Allies continued to maintain their presence and access to their sectors. It also did not disrupt the power balance in Europe, with NATO still enjoying military and economic superiority over the Warsaw Pact. Thirdly, the United States viewed the Berlin Wall as a propaganda victory for the West and a moral defeat for the East. The wall underscored the shortcomings and brutality of communism, highlighting that the East German regime had to resort to violence and coercion to retain its citizens. Moreover, the wall garnered sympathy and solidarity for the cause of freedom and democracy around the world. Consequently, the United States chose to tolerate the Berlin Wall as a regrettable but necessary compromise, deeming it preferable to triggering a nuclear conflict. America did not abandon Berlin. Instead, it provided diplomatic, economic, and cultural support. Simultaneously, it continued to engage the Soviet Union and its allies in other facets of the Cold War, including the Cuban Missile Crisis, the space race, and the arms race. The United States held on to the hope that the Berlin Wall's existence would not be perpetual, and that one day, the people of Berlin and Germany would reunite in freedom and peace. This aspiration materialized in 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell, heralding the end of communist regimes in Eastern Europe and the eventual dissolution of the Soviet Union itself. That's the intriguing story behind why America couldn't halt the Soviet Union from constructing the Berlin Wall.